Thursday.
Happy Thursday indeed. This week's just flying, right? Yeah, yeah. How
Yeah.
was uh, how was your live stream, Mike, yesterday?
Good. Oh, man. Yeah, it went really well. Interesting conversation, and it's going to tie, I think, together nicely with what we're going to
Mm,
talk about today because this shift, this mind shift, this difference in where we were a couple of months ago to now, this reconciliation is the term I keep coming back
mm,
to. Just getting to the point where we understand this is a long-term prospect and we need to start thinking more about how we can help each other live in this new reality, whether it's
yeah.
helping our colleagues at work, whether it's helping each other stay motivated like you do for me each morning on this little OSW daily live stream, or just thinking ahead to the future. How can we be proactive about
Mm,
taking care of our careers and ourselves long term during a pandemic? So
yeah.
it's an interesting kind of change from the crisis mode, the wondering, oh, what's going to happen and when's it going to be back to normal. All that kind of conversation, I think, is behind us. And now this is the world in which we operate. Things are still changing, things are still evolving, but let's plan to make the most of this and do what we can to adapt and innovate during these times as workplace leaders.
Great introduction, Mike. Great introduction, and I'm going to pull up the agenda what we're going to talk about, but in essence, it just ties beautifully into what you've just said, right? And if this is your first time coming across the channel, please do hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you're alerted to all upcoming videos. But today, Mike, I did put together a little agenda so that
Oh,
people can sort
good.
of see what we're going to talk about today,
I
so
like it.
that they can get a little excited or a little intrepidated or whether or not it's worth hanging around. So let's
They
hope
could
that
tune out immediately.
they
Just
can tune
leave
out and go,
right
yeah,
now.
this isn't for me. There you
This
go.
doesn't
There
look
you
like
go.
it's
There
something
you
of
go.
interest to you.
So, as I say, it's perfectly aligned to what you were talking about, right? So we're going to have a look at what Mark Cuban said yesterday on CNBC about the types of questions that people may be asked during interviews as people try to get back and find new opportunities for themselves. The recruitment and retention strategies from organizations, right? What is that workforce going to look like? The future of work, and then 3 ways to foster mental health. So, fully packed.
Wow.
There's a lot to get in here. Again, what amazes me, Mike, is we don't coordinate what we're going to look at, but we just simply send through suggestions, and it's amazing just how aligned we typically tend to be, which is I think reflects the narrative that we're seeing that people are talking about. So that's what's so good about this every morning. We get to really
Yeah.
tap into that. So, viewers who come here, well, you and I both benefit from it, and then obviously viewers if they come, then they can get to see what that is. But let's get cracking on what Mark Cuban said, and
Sounds good.
it's really interesting, right? So in essence, the questions that he anticipates people are going to be asked in the future, and it's what did you learn during the pandemic of 2020? So what did you do during this time to uh, promote yourself, accelerate, take opportunities to learn new things, develop skill sets? What did you do? And if you don't have a good answer for that, then I actually think it's going to send really weak signals given what we're going to talk about later and actually the job market and actually the war for talent and how that's really going to really come to the forefront, you know?
I agree totally. And this is the article is very brief and just a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things. He said, again, what did you do? What proactively did you do during at home? Did you take this time and watch Netflix? And certainly there's nothing wrong with finding an
Yep.
escape. I'm one who needs that mental break and finding ways to reset our brain after a busy day of digital experience. But I think he was addressing this kind of broader audience. What were the numbers, Steve? It's been a little while since we've addressed them, but over 40 million filed for unemployment over the
Yep.
last 4 months. And, the statistics are still in this early stage of what the real unemployment rate is and how it's fluctuating during the lockdown and then the slow reopening that's going on now. It's really too early to tell, but I've been listening to a lot of interesting conversations with economic experts, I guess, economists they're
Mm-hmm.
called. Economic experts are called economists.
There you
And
go.
they are talking about that we can't even begin to fathom, the real impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the global economy yet. And to think that we're just going to rebound as things reopen, and all the jobs that were lost over these last 4 months are going to come back miraculously is really, it's a pipe dream. So I'm gonna keep that in mind as we talk further about some of the other articles around the war for talent, as you mentioned. I think a lot of the things that we were playing, a lot of the rules we were playing by pre-pandemic as workplace leaders, as real estate decision makers, as facility management and employee experience focused professionals, a lot of that playbook has to be torn up and rethought. And to Mark's point, just putting the onus back on the individual, right. You, me, whoever's out there listening right now, whatever your scenario, whether you're continuing to work as we are, and maybe you're busier than ever, I still think it's time to add to your skills, to be proactive in your organizations, to make yourself available for new projects, new challenges, take a risk, be mindful and deliberate about putting yourself out there, because it's very easy in this remote work world to get lost in the shuffle and not be seen.
It's absolutely is. And just want to take one other sentence from him, and it echoes what you've just said, right? Wherever you want to work, use this time to become great at it. So take that onus on yourself, just like you said there, Mike. So really, really good. And then moving on to another article that was written by Evelina Nedland. And I hope I haven't done her justice by mispronouncing her name. But
we'll just blame your Irish accent if that's the case.
There you go.
Evelina, he's from Belfast. He's having trouble pronouncing English words.
You said that so beautifully, man. It's almost like you've rehearsed it before, which is correct. It's so good. And this comes from benefitnews.com. So recruitment and retention strategies for post-COVID workforce, right? With remote working becoming the new normal, she's provided guidelines on actually what organizations are going to be looking for, strategies they're going to be deploying in identifying talent. And in this new world, and whatever we move to, it's highly likely that you're not going to be competing with other people in your city. You're going to be competing with a global population. So how or what are you doing to actually ensure you're being seen by those as an individual basis, but then from an organization, they're looking at this taking this opportunity right now to really evaluate what their workforce needs to be, how they're going to develop those new remote strategies, and also how they can take advantage of skill sets that they previously didn't have access to. So obviously she's created three different things here that it's going to be people are going to be looking for, and sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. And there's two articles from this Benefit News organization or this website, and I wasn't familiar with it before our conversation today, and you shared these articles with me. But this one, I think, focuses a little bit more on what employers are going to be looking for, and the focus of putting the burden on employees to make themselves valuable. Things like I just said before, as a remote worker, how will you be judged? How will you be evaluated? Is it just about your output? I certainly hope we get to a place where we can get back to some of those softer skills and the what I call the intangibles, around culture and mission and relationships, and how can we recreate online and through this part-time existence in a workplace some of those great benefits of being in the workplace that we are now missing out on. And that was the focus yesterday on my live stream. We said, boy, what are the things you're missing out on? All of us, those serendipitous collisions and the conversations that happen quickly in the hallway, and looking over your desk to your neighbor and asking a quick question, or your boss just popping your head into your manager's office and say, what are you working on? How can I help? All those things are so much harder now that we're all dispersed. And if you don't make a deliberate choice, again, I'll keep using this proactive term. If you're not proactive about finding ways to connect yourself and your skills to your organization's mission, it's going to be harder to do long term. And then as this remote work becomes more the norm, as you said, it becomes an opportunity for organizations to get the work done maybe from a larger pool of employees. In fact, the fact that there's so many unemployed right now shifts the pendulum has swung from this full employment, 3-4% unemployment rate where there was a huge war for talent, to this huge pool, this gigantic pool of available workers and skilled labor that have been displaced because of COVID. I think the I guess I don't want to, what do I call it? The opportunity or the power shift, or the employer now has so much more going for them in a way. But maybe you'll disagree with this, and I think the next article is an interesting one because it might disagree with this. But that's where I'm feeling. I'm feeling that
Uh,
the employer is going to have more say going forward than the employee does. What do you think?
That's interesting. I actually think it's equal. And the reason why I say it's equal is because it goes both ways, right? So, yes, the employer has the ability to select anyone from anywhere in the world, but the employee now has the ability to, one, work for a lot more organizations that are beyond a train ride or a car drive away, because I think this is going to be
True.
a strategy that's going to be opened up. I think what we may find is, those people that live in cities like San Francisco, New York, where actually the cost of living is much higher, may struggle to work for a company that perhaps isn't based in those locations because they're not used to paying those salary levels. So I can see some sort of shifts from that perspective as well. And therefore, perhaps if you live in a lower cost location, be it wherever it is in the world, you may have a more opportunity to actually access an entry into these different organizations. So I can see it both ways. I think there's good opportunities. The other benefit I see that it wasn't touched on, but it just, as you were talking, it sort of came to my mind in some of the conversations we've been having offline. Organizations at this moment in time are going to be looking for diversity, right? Diversity in mindsets,
That's true.
diversity in culture, diversity in how everybody looks and feels, and every aspect of that. And I think accessing a remote workforce is going to provide organizations with the ability to tap into those diverse markets. And I think it's a real opportunity for that. I also think it's a real opportunity for employees or people who are actually looking for jobs and looking for roles to really push themselves forward to take advantage of this moment in time when organizations are trying to create and have in front of mind that they need to create a diverse culture, because a lot of these statistics are going to be reported going forward, I believe. So it's going to be something I think that people can put themselves and put their best foot forward, take the lessons that Mark Cuban was mentioning yesterday, and then apply it to this mindset of how organizations may recruit in the future.
Yeah, I'm glad you put it in that perspective, or gave me that perspective, because my gut was telling me unemployment's high. There's a lot more people out there wanting jobs than the roles available to them at this time, and it could be months, it could be years. But you're right, it does equal out. Some of these shifts, these broader marketplace shifts about remote work, do favor the employee because you have more opportunity as well. So interesting to see, how our audience feels about this, because
Yeah.
my gut tells me, and maybe you're hearing other things anecdotally, that as this crisis hit us, people, if you had a job and you made it through the initial, lockdown, close downs, cutbacks, if there were any, many organizations lay people off right away. Many didn't. Here's the piece that I think we're also forgetting. We're just at the beginning of this, Steve, and maybe you disagree, but the economists, again, I'll defer to their expertise. They're saying because of the way we kind of put a Band-Aid on the situation as government came in, and the payroll protection program, kept a lot of employees in their jobs because employers took this loan and were able to keep them on board. And that was a good thing. I'm not saying it wasn't. But as those benefits expire and as this recession drags on, we are in a recession clearly. If it gets to some of the predicted levels of reduced GDP and all those things that are signs of a bad economy, what's going to happen in 2021 or third and fourth quarter of this year, even as more people are laid off? I saw a news report last night, Delta Airlines maybe laying off, tens of thousands of people. And I imagine every industry, all these knowledge workers who are working from home right now, happily in many cases, and some not, but they're happy they have their jobs. But the anecdotal evidence I was going to say is that most aren't out looking for new jobs right now. I know a couple that I've heard that have left or changed jobs in this climate, but my gut tells me, and tell me if I'm wrong or if you see it differently, that if you had a job and you have a stable income during these uncertain times, you're going to hold on tightly to that job. And that seems what I'm seeing. And it's not like there's this war for talent because there's all kinds of empty positions and employers have their pick I'm sorry, employees have their pick of all these different job opportunities. I know many more people who have lost their jobs here in these early stages of this crisis and this pandemic, and they are desperately looking for work, and it's a challenge for them. Is that how you're seeing it, or do you see it a different way?
I would agree. I also think that we have yet to see the real impact of those jobs. One, for the reasons that you've said, right? There are organizations who are being supported and encouraged to keep staff, and actually, therefore, those loans are seen as grants and they don't have to be paid back. I also think there are many organizations that are trying to do the right thing by their employees right now because they don't know what the medium to long term future looks like for their organizations. And we look at the stock market, it's been driven by a handful of stocks, and it's just crazy sort of the growth in those stocks. But actually, and not that that should totally reflect the economy, but in essence, it's a really good indicator of what we are looking at. But fundamentally, have those organizations really looked at efficiencies in their staff correlated with their revenues just yet? I don't know. I do fear that, like you, that Q3, Q4, and maybe even 2021 is where we will actually really see the true impact of what we've been going through over these last period of time when organizations need to deliver value to their shareholders. Then I think we may see different decisions being brought forward. But yeah, really interesting and really, really deep. Thank you, Valina, for actually creating this document and actually an article and giving us it. And look, everything we do here, there is links below, so you feel free to go and check out these articles. But we do want to move to another article.
Before you move on, Steve, as you
yeah,
get that set up, I got to
yeah.
make a comment because this is, again, inside baseball, offline humor, but people will appreciate it because it's a perfect example of it. I was talking about something that's a little bit emotional and upsetting. My voice rises. I start talking too fast. I start stumbling over my words. And then I turn it over to you, and all of a sudden your voice has come down an octave. You've slowed your cadence. You're thoughtful. You're careful. And you calm me in your tone and demeanor. So thank you for that.
No, thank you, and thank you for pointing it out. We should just make this the thing. We should give each other high fives. You get a high five thing or something just whenever we do this thing. But thank you, man. I appreciate you saying so. You see my voice got up as I got excited again. So
Yeah.
there you go. There you go. So moving on to the second article that Evelina has written in the last couple of days, and it sort of continues the conversation. So how is coronavirus pandemic shaping the future of work? And we've discussed this a little bit, Mike. But I think there's some things that Evelina actually identified that actually a lot of these shifts that we're talking about now were beginning to happen prior to the pandemic. A lot of this has really accelerated some of those opportunities. It's also opened the eyes, and we've talked before about change the perspective of organizations, of employees, and really allow everyone to sit down and actually evaluate what is important. How do I contribute? How are employees contributing? What is our business model going forward? It's almost allowed us to take a pause and really evaluate. And Evelina here has went through some of the things that we've been talking about, and it's front of mind for everything, but it's beautifully put together. Remote work, digital health boom, and we talked about yesterday about how the workplace wellness market is going to bloom, almost double. I think what we sort of saw.
Sure.
And then the work-life balance is a really, really important one that I think people today are evaluating what really is important. What is my work-life balance? A lot of families with young kids who, were struggling with schoolwork and homeschooling have now got a different challenge because the kids don't have a structure. They don't have a routine, but they still have a routine that they need to continue to work, be productive while working, but also conscious and concerned about their kids not having a lot of activities, no camps to go to, struggling to meet up with friends and so on and so forth as we manage that social distancing. But it's
Right.
allowed us to really integrate and ask those questions. What do we want our work-life balance to be in the future? And a lot of people don't like work-life balance, but I think we kind of know what it is. It's almost like work's been integrated into our lives these days, right? It's an integration. It's an acceptance of that integration. So those are some of the things that I sort of took away, some of the thoughts I had, Mike. And what did you think when you read it?
Yeah, this is again a lot of great ideas here and a lot of truth that you just laid out there. I won't repeat it because it's all very apparent to me that these requirements for flexibility to help us all manage during these times is essential. And the fact that you pointed out that many employers, if not most employers, are certainly doing all they can to care for their employees, and I love to see that. But I just worry as times get tougher and difficult decisions need to be made, whether it's about the size of the real estate portfolio, the shrinking of the office, the changing of the workforce, some of these things we've not touched on are the leaning more on technology and automation and outsourcing, all these potential positives, the acceleration of some of the things that we've known make people more productive, more happier in their work, the ability to maybe come in 1 or 2 days a week, work from home 2 or 3 days a week, whatever that looks like. I think those are all great things. I just have this kind of feeling in my gut, this concern that, some organizations, and again, maybe desperate times will call for desperate measures. People will have to make choices. I keep coming back to, don't sit around waiting for your employer to put together some new great flexible work program that you can, do things the way you've always done them, but just do it from home, or do things the way, work's always been done with these, new flexibility. It's going to be, how can I adapt? How can I, as an individual, bring more value? Because the pressure on organizations economically will be there as the global market changes. That's going to put more pressure on employees to prove their value. As things become more automated, things become more remote work. And that was one of the articles, I can't remember which one, but there seemed to be a heavy emphasis on all the benefits to employees about these things, which again, I don't disagree with, but my gut kept telling me, listen, those thoughts were all about, kind of strategies, philosophies during the times of prosperity, low unemployment, and the war for talent. And I think if they haven't changed already, a lot of those rules of the game will change going forward. There'll be more people looking for work than have available opportunities unless they adapt and change. And then I don't know if there's another article you got to put up, but one of these articles, and they're all conflated in my mind. I'm not sure which one it was, but something about just a practical application. If as a 40 or 50-year-old knowledge worker in the world of, say, marketing, and say your industry gets hit hard by this COVID recession and your company goes out of business or lays people off, and there's always going to be a change, right? The new industries that are popping up because of this pandemic will certainly allow for more opportunities. So how do you adapt as an individual? Does a marketing manager or someone in the world of knowledge work all of a sudden go work for an Amazon warehouse as a 40 or 50-year-old? Is that the best solution? I don't know if that's the right answer. And it's going to be an interesting and somewhat challenging and to me daunting time ahead for many of us.
Yeah, and again, it's the common thread, or the red thread, as we've learned over the last couple of days.
I like that.
Is
my red shirt for the red thread
is
today.
The ownership, right? Individually, we have to take ownership of our careers, and probably more so than we've ever had to before. We've all been told there's no one more interested in your career than yourself. There's no one more interested in your development than you. And I think at this moment in time, we have to take that responsibility and learn, how do we do that more for ourselves, which I think is what you were covering. Yeah, great points.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the last article that we did want to touch on, Mike. 3 ways to foster mental health. And it's a great article. And as we think about it, it's, by providing employees with the resources, communicating clearly, consistently, and encouraging connecting with teams, people are better equipped to deal with the uncertainty. So as we think about, through the conversation we've had, the sequence with which everything has been there today, it's really important to follow that whole thread. And what's really interesting about this one, Mike, is 67% of employees are reporting higher levels of stress since the outbreak of COVID-19. Now,
Yep.
what I do want to say is um, this survey was done in April 2020, so we have to be conscious of the timing of it. It perhaps has shifted a little bit more because I think while there was a greater uncertainty at that time, I think people understand and expect, like you and I, that changes will come in Q3, Q4 2021. But I think some of
Yep.
that uncertainty has maybe been reduced a little bit. I think if that's fair to say.
Well,
But
we've adapted, haven't
yeah,
we? Adapted.
yeah,
You and I lived it through it together. My hitting the digital wall and the stress was getting to me because of some habits that had been born from this crisis. I had to adapt and adjust and take more mindful approaches about how much screen time I was having and what I was doing to relieve and rest my brain at the end of the day. I couldn't just go and watch more TV or scroll the internet because that was just adding to the digital overload. So yeah, I think here we are in a better place a couple months later, that because we've realized this is a long-term prospect, that this is something we've had to adapt to. But the topic's a good one, and I'm glad this article you shared it because I'm going to use this to be a springboard into future conversations
mm-hmm.
with others and on my live stream, because this is where I think we can be most helpful as workplace leaders, as you and I trying to be providing valuable content here. Yes, we'll continue to offer practical guides and strategies and protocols about office reopening and remote work and work from home and all those topics, but this overall holistic view of the person and the work they're doing, wherever that is, whether it's in a building part-time or it's home part-time or it's a hybrid of both, which I think is going to be the most likely scenario going forward. How can we really, be creative about this and be innovative and bring to the workforce, to our employees, to our colleagues, all those things that they need to be successful, not just in their work and their productivity levels, but in their connection to others and their connection to the mission of an organization, and feel like they're part of the culture while keeping their well-being top of mind. And that's what this article's touched on, some real practical ideas. That's why I
Yeah.
liked it so much.
Yeah, no, it was really, really good. So as we wrap up, Mike, I think I'll just bring up, back onto the screen, Mark Cuban's question, the questions that I think we all have to sort of really ponder and think about it. And yes, this is looking at as you're being interviewed for a new position, but I think this is something that, we can each ask ourselves today, irrespective of what our future looks like. What did you learn during the pandemic of 2020? What skills did you add during the pandemic? And I think that's something that we all have to ask ourselves. I think we all have to find the answer to it. And we also have to accept, I think, a little bit that the answer is going to change. As the
Yeah.
world
Hmm.
evolves, as our thinking evolves, as opportunities evolve, I think the answer will change. And I'm a big believer in writing down a question and giving myself 30 minutes to really think about what that question is and how do I answer that question, and setting that time limit of 30 minutes. And the real juice usually comes in the last couple of minutes whenever you've got through all the really easy stuff. Then you get to the real fundamentals and the foundations of actually why that question is really important to you. So I encourage people to take those moments today, write down that question, go lock yourself away in a room, and write down that piece of paper and see what you can come away with. And if this was useful for you and you found something from it, leave a note in the comments. Let us know. Reach out to us on oswdaily@gmail.com. But yeah, that's really good. It's really cool. Yeah.
I want to take a moment to
Go
thank
ahead.
the people that have reached out over the last couple of days. I think
Mm-hmm.
our conversations earlier this week have struck a chord with
Yeah.
our audience, and I appreciate hearing from people. We know that more people out there listen and watch the broadcast and consume a lot of our content, and it's not the normal thing to take time and send a note or post it on social media or send an email, but we appreciate you out there listening and watching, and those who shared their comments and interact with us. That's really the highest form of compliment, and certainly what gives us energy to keep doing this. Beyond just being with you each day, Steve, you give me energy. And again, whether this broadcast goes out to the internet or it's just you and I sitting in a room chatting
Right.
virtually, it's all worth it to me. So I thank you, sir.
No, no, and thank you, Mike. And as I think about routines, both you and I, we love the routine of doing this. I'm really enjoying now the routine of actually going and finding content that we can sort of prepare ahead of time and sort of put real structure because not only does that allow us to actually find what the world's really thinking about that day, it allows us then to share it with the audience. And I encourage people, if you have content that you think would be useful for this live stream, feel free to send it through to us. If you want to contribute or write something for Open Source Workplace, feel free to send it through to us as well. We Open Source Workplace is all about providing a platform for people to share information, share knowledge about workplace productivity and employee experience. So please feel free to reach out to us, and if you want to contribute in any way, shape, and form, please feel free to do so. So for today, Mike,
Love it.
thank
Love it.
you. I appreciate the conversation today.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
You too, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.